you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Let me allow myself to introduce you to Deborah Wright, retired, a Pan-Africanist, retired from the Avery Research Center. And above her, we got Shelly Ann Thompson, who's down in Jamaica. She's a journalist in information services. And this is Dr. Tiffany Pogue.
Hey, Dr. Tiff, how are you?
Oh, I'm freezing.
Lynn will show up sooner or later. I ain't worried about him. He's working.
I'm freezing.
I know you froze, but you'll fix it.
You did.
Okay.
Where are you? And what's your area?
I'm in Warner Robins, Georgia. So I'm about an hour south of Atlanta.
You where? I'm sorry.
I'm in Warner Robins.
Okay.
Your signal coming in a little choppy.
A little choppy.
Yeah.
But we gonna work. We patient. We in class. We in class, Doc. So the location again was what?
Warner Robins, Georgia.
Boom. 2 names. Woo, woo.
Yeah, I'm about an hour south of Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
See, yeah. Dr. Tiff ain't no just regular Dr. Tiff. Dr. Tiff comes with So having her join us for this discussion about, ancestor remembrance and how they work through us and what they do, I know that more than falls into her parameters. And she is adept at bringing young people into the fold and in the conversation. And that's what I love about her.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the work we do. We try to make it plain.
I'm not even going to go with any poignant questions. I know you do these all the time. So what's Tip got to say about, let's see, because you can cover just about any blooming topic under the sun. Bringing young adults into the mindset of ancestral remembrance. And we were just on earlier with Neka and Isaac from Go Gay Africa, and they speak of their work of going around the diaspora and bringing the diaspora to Africa. And they spoke of, she said, I understand folks get upset about who sold who and who was taken. She said, but we hurt too. You left us stunted. You took the best of the best of the best. We spoke about moments of the mindset of colonization and how you don't get away from these things, because she gave us an example of what it's like to sit an exam and have to write the white man's name as the discoverer of the river that she know her grandfather and great-grandfather had been pulling water from for years.
Wow.
One of these days, I'm going to get all y'all in one room.
Wow. Wow. So with that, I just want to start with a story, right? Speaking of young people in diaspora and both sides being the same thing. When I went to Ghana, I went with a professor from Emory, Emmanuel Larte, took a group of us over, and we went to Cape Coast first, and I had some emotions there, but then we went to Elmina. And I am certain, based upon that experience, that must be where my ancestors came through, because what I felt in that place, I can't describe. It's something about where the pain becomes almost tangible, like it has a feel to it. And I broke down, right? I was the guide was telling us what would have happened to the women in these female dungeons and all this kind of stuff, and it overwhelmed me. It overwhelmed me completely, and I got so hysterical that they had to take me out. And so, for those of you who have been to Elmina, when you come out of the door of no return, there is now a fishing village there. And people are going about their day-to-day business there in the fishing village, not knowing Some people are having their thing inside. So
Mhm.
when I came out, and I was full of tears and just slinging snot, and I was in the full-on ugly cry. A young girl who was selling peanuts to the fishermen came up to Dr. Larte and positioned herself in front of me, arms akimbo, right?
Hmm.
With her hands on her hips and neck doing this. She was speaking Twi. I didn't understand her, but I understand that posture and I know this, right?
Get it together.
So she's talking to him and he turns to me and his face was just so sad. She walked away eventually. And he said, do you know what she said to me? And I said, no, what happened? Because by then I had calmed down. And he said he asked her, do you know what this place is? Now, mind you, she's on the other side of the door of no return selling peanuts every day. She must have been around 12, 13. And he asked her, do you know what happened here? And she said no. He asked her, had she ever been inside? She said no. Said some really horrible things happened to our people there. And she looked at me and looked at him and then asked him, her people or our people?
Oh.
And that was kind of the end of the conversation, but that has affected me immensely since it happened, because it's easy for us in the diaspora to put face and name to the hurt of loss. But I don't think we've ever really unpacked on this side the feelings of the people who were left there, right? Because families were broken. And that hurt doesn't know geopolitical boundaries. And so part of why I do what I do is to try to put families back together again. It's never too late for that work. And it's also it was very visceral to me, the experience of knowing that young children are growing up with that kind of proximity. So, I'm thinking about Charleston, I'm thinking about Savannah, these places where Mobile, which is where I'm born, these places where these vessels would have been bringing Africans in, and the lack of knowledge that school children in these ports have about what happened to their ancestors is the same as that young girl in Ghana who has no clue about what happened to her ancestors. And it's the same type of unknowingness that we seek to address. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Have mercy. I'm okay. I got to breathe through that one. I have to breathe through that one.
A lot of healing needs to take place.
A lot of it says when that day happened at Elmina, our driver, we went to the river afterwards to do just a cleansing, to let it go, type thing with the water. Black folk everywhere love to go to the water to heal. And he looked at me, he said, I've never felt that. Like, I've seen other tourists have that happen, but I never felt that. And, and then it becomes a question of why. I think that's the root of a lot of this hurt on both sides when it comes to our relationship with each other is why? Why would you do that to us?
Yes.
And for us experiencing it from the diaspora side, a lot of misunderstanding of why that would happen. And I'm sure on the other side, there's a lot of why too. Wole Soyinka answered the question for me in a way, not speaking personally to me, but I heard an interview of his and someone asked him that very esoteric question of why would transatlantic slavery have to happen? Like, why did the Ma'afa have to happen? And Soyinka said that the creator is so wise that it knew one day there would need to be Africans on this globe who hurt from the loss so much that they would remind all of us of the importance of culture. And I think for me, that answered so many questions, that there has to be a group hungry to know. And I think that's what the diaspora does. We are hungry to know. And in that hunger, we may convince continental Africans to investigate what they may have lost as a result of the Ma'afa.
And that's just what she was speaking of this morning. She said, we lost too, we hurt too. The disruption in fact, she said they took the best of the best. We were left stunted.
it's a power. I've been there a few times actually. It's powerful.
Are you-
So I
okay.
really appreciate what
Excellent.
you're saying and your
So
perspective
I'm not sure
and the
where.
work that you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I just, one of the things I tell all of my students, I pray that on all of us in the diaspora is to have that experience.
Absolutely.
It's something affirming about that experience. It just, I'm trying not to cry now. It just, every time I think about it,
Right.
it completes the story for me. Not that our story is completed from the slavery experience, but just it completes a story to me about the tenacity of culture and the strength of our people. Because to be able to go through that and still be where we are, we some magical people.
Hey.
We are some magical people. And I think it's
can't
easy
hear.
to forget that. But it's something about standing there, knowing what they went through, that convinces me every time.
Right. Right.
Dr. Tiff,
Yes.
I would like to pick up on something that you said, and I'd love to get your perspective on it.
Okay.
It's about the breaking of our families, because sometimes I'm based in Jamaica, and sometimes when I speak with my friends and they feel a disconnection towards Africa because they felt as if Africa sold them out, and there's a lot of discourse in Jamaica that is about a number of the enslaved persons. They were criminals in Africa, and they were sold into slavery by fellow Africans. So sometimes there is a disregard and a disconnect between us and Africans because they felt as if Africa sold us away. They didn't want us.
Yeah, and I think all of us struggle with that at some point or another. The way I teach it to my students is that the slavery existed on the continent prior to chattel slavery, right? And so a lot of the ways that slavery was practiced prior to European contact had nothing to do with dehumanization, conquering lands and, as you said, crimes and things like that. But it wasn't necessarily trying to convince someone that they lacked humanity. And so I think, just for me, at the very beginning, and this is kind of supported by the historical record, at the very beginning, I'm not sure people who engaged in the trade were completely knowledgeable about what was going to happen to the people they were selling into slavery.
Right. I agree.
Because we know, for example, in Dahomey, a lot of so-called slaves were able to become so close to the royal family that they became like advisors. And so there is no, for me, I find consolation in the fact that they may not have known. Now, of course, as history continues, there had to be some inclination, but there are always people of every culture, of every skin tone, of every gender, ethnicity, whatever. There are evil people. And I just find solace in the fact that not all people were.
Exactly. I agree with you. I don't think we should get caught up in that as we move forward and try to heal and try to connect and try to do what we need to do. That's the last thing we need to get caught up in.
Right.
And so many of us are, unfortunately, but I think we don't need to.
And I think what we said earlier is the point of it is that it comes from a place of hurt.
Yeah.
It comes from a place of hurt, and it comes from a place of not knowing the other. Right? Because if
and misinformation.
Yes,
exactly.
Because if you grow up in the diaspora, you're constantly fed these images of Africa that make you ashamed of her.
My God.
Right? So it's easy not to want the connection.
And it feeds into that already narrative of we sold you.
Yes.
So it's so important that there are stories being told. So the generation can know about what was true.
Exactly. And to make those connections, I think I'm so happy to be with you guys today because it's important for us in the diaspora to have conversations with each other.
Yes.
Because we all know different kinds of hurt. But I think we all also have the different kinds of healings that are necessary for each other. You know, so the more that we're in conversation, the more that we travel, the more that we share food, the more that we share culture, the more we can heal.
You know, I do agree. And I think that we all don't tap into or try to understand or try to get connected to on some level each other's hurt. You know, people don't recognize that African Americans do hurt. We hurt deeply, or people from the Caribbean hurt deeply, or that Africans, again, hurt deeply. We don't recognize that. But I think if we can begin these conversations, we can begin to understand and have a little more empathy for each other, a little more compassion for each other. We just have this thing where we don't like, you know, we have issues with, I mean, we can still have issues, but we just need to be a little more compassionate with each other and our experiences. And, you know, yeah.
A lot of that is we have the African bravado going on. We don't want to let other people know we're hurting.
Right.
Yes.
You know, so that's why celebrating the ancestors is a perfect opportunity to let all that raw emotion out. You know what I mean? Because any other time I got to pretend to be strong. But those opportunities give me a chance to be all that I am. We need that. We need that. And it's not just, I think about, when I teach diaspora to my students, I always talk about Mardi Gras is the same as Caravana is the same as Junkanoo is the same. It's the same everywhere. And that, again, right, Haitian Rara, all of that is an opportunity to release. And as much as we can, we need to be ritualizing and creating ceremony around these periods of release, because it provides the opportunity for us to be raw and vulnerable and go on and let the tears flow. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes from the pits of our soul. But either way, it's got to come out.
Just purge it out.
You got to let it go.
Oh, that's a good point. You teach teachers how to use the African paradigm differ from the European paradigm in terms of the way the education is approached. And how important is that to kind of separate that out?
Right. I think one of the things, again, it's the tragedy of diaspora, is that sometimes we're disconnected, or we feel disconnected from our traditions. And one of the things that I realized very early on in life is that Africans probably been teaching longer than any other people on the face of the earth, just because they're that, you know, we're the oldest. Mm-hmm. So if we've been teaching longer, if I want to be a good teacher, I'm going to look to the people that had the most experience, most expertise. And it doesn't always look like what happens in a four-walled classroom. And I think more of us in our various occupations need to do that. We need to return to, well, how was this done hundreds of years ago? Because here's one thing that my mentor, Mwanu Mushuja, taught me. And it's so true, y'all. Black folk don't do nothing that don't make sense.
Hey.
We are a very practical people. We're very pragmatic. If it doesn't make sense, we'll stop. So if there are traditions that have lasted and endured, they work.
Right.
For whatever purpose, they're working for somebody. Now, they might not always work in everybody's best interest, but they're working for someone if we continue to do them. And so we have socialized children, and since Africans have been on this earth, I look for the pedagogy there. I look for the teaching there. You know, anything, there's a book called Deep Like the Rivers. I think the author's name is Webb. He writes about education in the slave quarter community. And that book, it's good. It's really good, because I had never thought about education before in that way. Right? Because, you know, you don't need a school to teach somebody something. Right. And given the current context of COVID-19, where we're having to reinvent the educational environment, reinvent how distance learning occurs, all that kind of good stuff, it's time to look to the innovators of education. They created it. So how would they have done it? That's how I'm approaching all of this right now. How would my people have done this? because they did it in the midst of the most horrible experience ever. And if they could teach in that, we can teach in this.
Which reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by Malcolm X. I noticed in just browsing your social media, you know that we have the same Malcolm X picture. And one of my favorite quotes by him is, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And like, just kind of want to find out what that means to you, and kind of, obviously you agree, but just kind of expound on that.
History is the most rewarding. You know, you and I, in the conversation we had earlier today.
Yeah.
It's so funny because a lot of people try to make ancestral reverence this hard, difficult. I need money. I need a priest. I need this cloth. I need that candle. It doesn't require all of that. It really doesn't. It is a very personal, individualized.
They ain't hear you.
Listen,
say it again.
You know, they like it. Now, my people like it when I set out a whole plaza and I cook for them and all that. They like that, right? But it's not necessary. And when you seek them out, it only takes a little bit of effort. You seek them out, they give you instantaneous reward and validation. It's almost instantaneous. I lit a candle the other night and the answer to the problem I had came like that.
Hello.
It's that easy. Because they're here, they're waiting.
Yeah.
They're waiting. And that's why studying history is its own reward. We study the history of our people. The answers for all of this stuff is there. It's right there. And the moment you open up a so-called slave narrative, or the moment you open up a letter from one of these HBCU presidents to a trustee, all the answers are there. You just got to look. You just got to look. And it's an instantaneous reward.
I'm going to put the two of y'all on the hot seat at the same time. You want to open your mind. You want to achieve that position of woke, whatever woke means. What's in your library? Let's see. I know it's going to be hard, but let's see. The top 3 to 5.
Got 3 to 5 books. I got the first one off the top of my head.
Yeah, there they go. Talim, I need your 5 too. Deborah, I ain't leaving you out. Deborah, come on now.
What's that?
We prepared a list of books that young people would need to, one, know that they come from this power, and 2, have an opportunity to know the work of the ancestors, remember the ancestors, and acknowledge that the ancestors are working through them.
The ones that opened me up actually was the autobiography of Malcolm X, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization.
Oh, you took one of mine.
I would say Tapping the Power Within by Ayanna Vanzant. And I was trying to think of another one. So African Origin Civilization, Myth or Reality by Chikanta Diop is probably another big one for me. It's one of my early heavy hitters.
Who we throwing on the hot seat next? Come on, Dr. Tim.
Okay, so I was making a list. I got the 4 quick off the top of my head. These are my top 4. The first one is my favorite book of all time. Well, I got you 5 because when I said that, the 5th one came in. So the top one is a book that literally, just the prologue changed my life. Just the prologue. You don't even have to read the whole book, just the prologue. And that's 2,000 Seasons.
Yes, I was going to say that too. I was going to suggest anything by Arma.
Yes, listen, that
anything
is my dream.
by Aikwe Arma.
My dream is to go to Senegal and just
and the Healers. The Healers is another one.
Yeah. Put it. There you go.
Yes.
Right off.
Yes.
So 2,000 Seasons, just the prologue. So in the prologue, he talks about the utterers. And I have always tried to see myself as an utterer. So that's 2,000 Seasons. Yeah. The second one is Asa Hilliard's African Power.
Ooh.
Yes.
I'm partial to
Yes.
that one because it's about education, right? And if we're talking about books to share with young people, it's a very short, very easy read, very clean and clear. Oh, now I'm up to 6. Hold on, I got another one. Altar of My Soul by Marta Vega, because I think she makes it very clear the pull of traditional African religion to those of us in the diaspora. The Author of My Soul. Then you got to have some Du Bois, so The Souls of Black Folk. And so Marimba Anis, Let the Circle Be Unbroken. That one is kind of hard to find, but that one she talks about when we are doing what our ancestors did, we have the opportunity to become them. And I think that's just a powerful point. Right? So we don't want that circle to be unbroken. I do what they did so they continue to live. And so that I can continue to live. So that one's for me. And then the last one is a contemporary book. It's new, right? It's within the last 5 years. It touched me so that my latest tattoo is actually a chapter title from the book. And it's heavy. Kiese Lemon's Heavy.
There you go.
Because I've not seen a book. Yes, 2000 Seasons. I've not seen a book do Southern Black youth culture the way Heavy was able to. So those are my 6.
Okay. You really this is a spot that's kind of tricky for me to get into at the moment, but I am going to suggest, as I said, anything by Arma. That would be 2000 Seasons, The Healers, Kemet, which is a really important book, I think.
Yeah.
Kemet in the House of Life. And I'm also going, I spent quite a bit of a period of time and just read African novelists, so I could really, at a certain point in my life, so I could really get a good understanding of culture. And this was before Nollywood, so I was reading novelists who were, so that would be it would be Arma, it would be what's the Senegalese writer that I spent a lot of he did the film Shado. He was that's Ousmane Sembene. Yes, so Sembene. I also think in terms of analysis, first of all, I suggest The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, okay? Yeah. But in terms of analysis, Tony Martin, who did a lot of analysis, he passed on, but he did a lot of Pan-Africanist analysis, the Pan-African connection, and he did Race First, which is a major piece, the organizational and ideological struggles of the UNIA and the ACL. So that's a major piece. I suggest that. And I do also suggest anything by Joseph Holloway, Africanisms and American culture and that kind of thing, to kind of get an understanding. Those are just a few things. And in terms of African writers, there's Bessie Head, there's Buchi Amachita, of course, just any of the African writers. I suggest any African novelists. That helps us to kind of bridge this gap and get an understanding of culture and in Africa. So those are some of my thoughts and suggestions.
Oh, I had one more that I forgot, which is Of Water and the Spirit by Malidoma Somé. That when I was in my 20s, that one definitely opened me up to a lot of the way that the spirit world operates and the things that he went through with his rites of passage. Definitely was eye-opening for me.
Right.
Messing with my head. I was literally just looking at the cover because I have to cheat, because The Spirit of Intimacy, I travel with that book. That was written by Sambufu. May she rest in peace. But particular book I travel with. Yeah. And because I was real young at one time, and we talking contemporary youth, I cannot leave out Mama Louisa Tisha Jambalaya. Jambalaya
Yes.
saved my life.
Yes, that's a wonderful piece. Yes.
And then of course, I'm not gonna lie, Harold Corlander, Yoruba Gods, And the fact that you're walking around in New York and some of the folks that they're talking about are the pictures that are in there, like, hold up, that's that EI right there. That's that Bible right there. So you get to live and walk in it. And it's, whoo.
Well, let me ask this question. Do you think our young people are reading enough? Do you think they're, Dr. Tiff, I mean, you're an educator and you're still in the academy. Do you think that they're reading enough? Do you think they're grasping enough from what they're reading? Do you think you're seeing them picking up the books enough, or are they getting more from online and not really taking it in?
Yeah, that's a hard one, you know, because the answer is no, they're not reading enough. And it's easy to try to blame them. I don't think they are to blame. A lot of these public schools now it's just test prep. That's all they're doing, test prep. So the kids are getting accustomed to very short reading passages and just looking for an answer that will be offered in multiple choice format. And it has done a number on their literacy skills and on their confidence to think for themselves. And so by the time I see them get to college, they don't have the stamina to read. That's extremely unfortunate. They do have the hunger though. So once I have a couple of conversations with them, I get texts all the time from my students, particularly this time of year. They're like, give me something to read over the summer. They want a list. They want a book. They do want to read. They just don't have, I explain it to them. It's like a muscle. If you want to become a runner, you don't go out there and run 5 miles this morning. You have to work up to that. And so I think one of the things that it indicts me upon is creating blog posts and videos and things like that that are in short, digestible clips so that they're getting fed, but they're also building stamina, because that's what it's going to take. They don't have it right now. They just don't.
Right. So that's what you mean by the stamina to read. They don't have the stamina.
They you know, if they can't get it in 10 to 15 minutes, they're not ready. They won't. They're just not willing to.
Right.
And you know, that's how society is shaping them. Everything is so instantaneous. They want the instant gratification. They want the instant reward. That's what's so dangerous about these YouTube videos put out by people just talking off the top of their head, because
right.
they can digest that in 15, 20 minutes. And then we try to send them to GEO. We're not going to get through GEO if their attention span is only 15, 20 minutes. So we just got to work with them to just keep piecemealing it to them until they build up the muscle to sit and read and digest.
Or if they do, they want you to give them the digest version and say, I ain't got to read all that. Like, what's the bullet points? So they want you to do the work of actually kind of bulleting out what the important stuff is, because they don't have the time to do all that, even though they ask you to do it.
Yeah, they don't think they have it. They don't think they have it. Yeah. And I really think that's a big danger in the U.S. public education system right now. It's a huge danger. I can ask my kids, what do you think about X, Y, Z? And they're afraid to tell me because they think there is an absolute right answer to something. And that's a very dangerous thing that is happening with education, because they have no confidence in allowing themselves to be a source of knowledge. And I want to make that point clear, because here's the thing, right? One of the beautiful things about ancestral reverence is realizing just how genius our people are. They're genius. And the American public school system, as many of our children experience it here in the U.S., does not teach them to be sources of knowledge. It teaches them to seek knowledge outside of themselves. That's part of the reason why they won't sit and think, because they don't see themselves as capable of producing good ideas. They want to regurgitate someone else's ideas. They feel comfortable doing that. They don't feel comfortable creating thought for themselves. And I just in my study of history, this has got to be one of the first periods in Black history where that is a case. Right? We've always produced intellectual giants who wanted to do the work of learning. And I don't know that our children right now they may want to do the work of learning, but they're just not prepared in many ways to do it. And that's our fault.
How can we salvage? How can we turn? Okay, they've graduated from high school. They've gotten to your college classroom. How can you can't mold, fix, and shape all of them when you push them out. But the ones that you do get a hold of, what has it that's propelled them, or say a student that you saw the most dramatic change in, and literally saw them light bulbs open up above their heads, and even the swagger changed throughout the semester because they discovered who they came from. How do you help them?
I have one baby. When you say that, my mind goes straight to her. A couple of summers ago, the university gave me some money to work with students who were at risk of dropping out. So this baby was on academic suspension, and if she didn't get it right, she was going to be out the next semester. And so I worked with her over the summer, and I just did what I do, right? I taught her about who she was. I affirmed her. I affirmed her family, her lineage. And right now, this past semester, she texted me the other day, she has a 4.0.
Woof.
Because all it takes, Naeem Akbar, Talim was talking about Naeem Akbar. Naeem Akbar has a concept called the legacy of competence. And his argument is, if you allow Black children to see the greatness in their own lineage, then you improve their confidence. And once that confidence is up, they can do anything.
Fact.
If they can do anything. And I would argue that's why during the period of the Ma'afa, the connection between us and our line was attempted to be severed. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't severed. Some historians will try to say it wasn't severed. But I think that was the reason they attempted to sever us from our lineage, was to remove that idea of genius from us. And so when we learn about our people and we learn what they endured and what they created, you become unstoppable.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my master's thesis. So my master's degree is in diaspora studies. And I remember I couldn't figure out what I wanted to write about for my master's thesis. And I remember I'm a dreamer. So Egun speak to me in my dreams. And one night I dreamed that I was walking in the woods and it was a beautiful day. The birds were singing, everything was green. You could smell the earth like after a rain. It was beautiful. And then I came across the ruins of an old plantation. And even in the dream, I could feel such hurt and such sorrow. I mean, it was painful. And I just wanted to run as far as I could away from the plantation. So I'm running away through the woods, and I come across a small puddle. And I say puddle because it was small, but it had waves like an ocean. And as I reached down to try to touch the water, because it amazed me so, I heard a voice. And it was a woman's voice, and she told me to go back and look again with my more clear eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back to this plantation, and I looked at the ruins again, and everything, all these African symbols were glowing on the wood. I mean, just everywhere you look, something was glowing. And I remember her voice. She said to me, it's important to feel the hurt and the sorrow sometimes because it keeps us humble.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't ever forget that your people created life in the midst of death.
Hello.
And that very next Christmas, I had that dream. And the very next Christmas, I wasn't driving. I was in the back of my parents' car. We were driving from one of my uncle's houses in Mobile, Alabama, to another uncle's house. And on the drive, I happened to just, kind of stare out the window, and I realized all these iron bars on these windows, and I know you're in the so you see it. All these Adinka symbols, and most of them are Sankofa, which means don't forget. And I'm like, wow, how much genius is it to bring your imagery into the Ma'afa and put it in architecture so that your children's children can look and remember, never to forget.
Boom.
And I was like, oh, my people are so fly. It's so fly. It's so fly. And that's when I decided, you know, I can do anything I want to do academically. Because they did that. And they told me not to forget that genius.
Now, we're going to touch on a sweet part that's a love of yours. Hip hop.
Because it's just like the Adinkra. So the Adinkra, right? Black people culturally communicate in what we call in the academy restricted codes, which means we don't like to say a lot to say a lot. You know, that's just like when I teach it to my kids, I talk about, you know, your mama only have to give you the eye. She don't have to say sit down. She just give you the eye. You know what to do, right? So we try to condense our communication into just as few words as possible. And it's largely symbolic. That didn't die. The same people that created Adinkra, so just a sign in a window that means don't forget, are the same. The children of those people are creating lyrics that only they can understand.
Hey.
That's the beauty of cultural tenacity. Culture doesn't die. It might morph and it might adapt, but it doesn't go anywhere. And Black people for eons have played with language. We make language do what we want it to do. That's why we love Armand. That's why I love Kiese Layman, because Toni Morrison, we can make the words do what we want them to do. And that's the genius of a lot of these MCs right now. And it intimidates some of us, right? It intimidates some of us because we don't get it. But it's high thought. It's high thought. And I truly believe if we can help them understand the genius in that, then they can understand their genius is beyond that as well.
Wow.
Chalet.
Wow.
I'm calling you in on the island tip. You sitting down there, you absorbed a whole lot. I saw your head nodding.
Wow. I went off into a totally different space.
Tell him Tip told you.
Totally different realm. And I'm thinking about my generation because I'm a millennial. They say millennials are those who were born after 1981. I'm a millennial. I'm thinking about my generation and just how, especially for us in Jamaica, and we so want that American dream, if you understand, because we don't believe in ourselves. We don't have that faith in ourselves. So what you said about we are being taught to regurgitate and not to create, that really resonated with me, because a lot of that for me has to do with, if we were taught to believe in ourselves, then we would not want to be thinking about somewhere else to achieve that dream, but to fulfill Marcus Garvey's philosophy that we can uplift ourselves to be who we want to be and to have that confidence in self. So where do we start? We are reading less.
And do what you
we
will.
are reading less. So how are we going to reach how are we going to reach my generation and the next generation that is coming? So we can go back to being the creators that we ought to be.
I think part of it is just letting them see that they already do it. You know, the youth are always creating. We don't really turn into consumers until it's time to pay some bills. Like when our parents push us out the house. That's when we turn into consumers. But the youth are always creating. Always. They have new words. Look at TikTok. These kids are incredibly they're genius in their ability to innovate and create. And everybody around the world wants to emulate them. And I think if we can help them see that's what's happening, then it becomes possible that the dreams don't have to only live in social media. What would a community look like if you could design it completely from top to bottom? you know, the food you eat and how it grows and how the houses are situated. What would it look like to create those kinds of things? And I think as educators, that's the kind, rather than giving a pen and pencil test, that's the kind of assignment the kids need. Because they got to see that they already are capable of doing these things. You know, Finland is considered one of the top educational systems in the world. And one of the things they do is the summer before a senior year, the students come together and they have a meeting and they decide, okay, this is an outstanding social problem in our country. We're going to set out this year to learn to solve it. And so they tackle that problem through math, through science, through history. But their whole agenda their senior year is to address this societal need. And I think that is something that we could do now to help the young people see that the creativity they need to create what they have, what we want, they already have it.
But Dr. Tiff, I want us to take it to another level though. I want us to become inventors.
Yes.
So I take your point about TikTok, but TikTok was not created by my people.
No, but everything on, not the platform. We did not create the platform, to your point, but everything that makes that platform go, yes, we did create.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it requires that push to say, okay, you made somebody else's machine work. Now go make your own.
Exactly.
So we're on the same. I remember when I was growing up, my cousin came to live with my parents. And there was a period of time where all the lights around the house, around the outside of the house, were shot out. And we thought, you know, vandals were coming and shooting up the outside of the house. We couldn't figure out what was happening to the lights. And then one day my mother was cleaning his room and she found he had taken a broomstick and sawed off the bristles of one end. So he had a long stick. And he had gotten one of those thick rubber bands from the mailman and had duct taped the rubber band to one end. He had a clothespin duct taped to the other end. And he would pull that rubber band back and hold it with the clothespin and put a rock there. And it was as strong as any BB gun. He was shooting out all kind of stuff all over the neighborhood. That kind of genius our kids have. They can make whatever they want.
Yes, they can. We just got to get on make sure they have the knowledge to patent the sucker.
Right. Exactly.
You know, register these ideas. And even that, but that's also been an issue from day one. It's not that we didn't invent, we didn't follow through with things to own it.
We didn't follow through. And a lot of people have gotten rich off Black genius.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
A lot of people. And unfortunately, they don't look like us. Okay.
Oh,
I have a sister friend in Miami, right? And she's in financial planning. She's a financial advisor. And she said what's bothering her right now is in Miami, they're starting to do these kids Shark Tank, like the TV show. And so the kids come with these inventions and, you know, the people will buy the invention for $500, $700, and so on and so forth. And she said, it's horrible because the kids are so excited. They have the certificate. They got this little money. And then people are going off and making millions off of their invention.
With their genius, with their intellectual.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is just creating spaces and networks to really put those things in use. Just like my girlfriend is a financial planner, she needs to be in touch with families so that if you do, if your child does invent something like that, I don't think many of us know who to go to be protected. To protect our intellectual property.
Yeah, and start that patent process and how to register it. And
well, you can find us on Google.
Yeah, but it's an elongated process that some folks don't think, well, okay, I need to go pay some money to get this patent listed in my name, because you developed it from dust, string, and whatever else, and then now you have to have dollars to own it. It's like starting your first business. You need to have, you've been doing it, but now you need to have some money to go make it officially a business so you can do what you do. And that's always that in-between measure. And as you say, that your folks there willing to come in, swoop up and take it off your hands any minute you want, because they've got mass production accessible to them.
Right.
We're gonna own it. They keep forgetting that what they say, put in the book, because we ain't reading. But we got to start.
Right.
We got to start, and we got to have systems. So I might not know how to do that, but I need to be able to put you in touch with somebody. So
exactly.
That I think that's one of the things that I'm most interested in. That kind of behind the scenes work is just putting people in connection.
Yes, I'm there with you. It's just to ensure that the right people are connected with the right folks. Because the foundation is there, they have the talent, they have the skills, but they're not connecting with the right people that can take it from that stage to another stage, and then another person would take it to another level as well.
Right. And that's why I'm so excited you're on this call and you're talking about the things you're talking about, because the sister in Miami and I, we need you. Because one of the things we want to start doing when all this COVID stuff is over is actually starting an exchange program where you send me 2 or 3 kids, I'm going to send you 2 or 3 kids, and they experience diaspora.
Boom.
Great.
Let's connect these dots.
That's great. Because and then it's not only about the cultural immersion, but it's also learning from each other. Creativity is that exchange of creativity, and also it's maintaining those connections. So when they get older, they already have a network. A lot of these billionaires, they form friendship at high school, in college, and they're the same people that they go to that will do something for them now to propel their business to another level. So it's to maintain that friendship. So I like that. It's to have our children networking so they can form friendships that can assist them throughout their business life.
And here's the other part of it. I think if children experience the U.S. for themselves, they won't have the dream to come here. Right? Then we realize that we can create whatever we want wherever we go.
Exactly. And be able to live the life where we want to live.
Right. Right. Because, the U.S. is an illusion. It's an illusion. A lot of people are figuring that out now. We've known it for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you talk about the tenacity of our culture, even when you spoke about your uncle's house and the architecture and everything, our culture is so strong. So we lost so many of our relatives in the transatlantic trade, but the culture is still alive.
And that's how they live. That's how they live, is by us protecting and celebrating that in spite of every attempt. I was Ossie Davis's eulogy for Malcolm X. I listened to it on the 19th in celebration of his birthday. And one line always sticks out to me, and that's "unconquered still." And that's how I feel about our people. Even those who are at the bottom of the Atlantic right now, they are unconquered still.
Yes.
Because we're here. Unconquered still.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what we celebrate. We celebrate that.
Yeah.
Ooh, have mercy. I'm gonna ask the question. Since you're a dreamer, and they come to you that way, what age did they start tapping? Because some people got some children out there and they don't know how to deal with their dreams. That was one of them. I show up and I put the coloring book or just some plain paper and some crayons by the bed. And when you wake up in the morning, I'll be there waiting to see what you did. And some people don't understand the children that they have. They're like, oh, they're rambunctious. No, they're not. Sometimes we're just not dealing with the spirit of these babies. And if you can touch on it times, because since you're seeing them through ages and you get to know, I want to know.
Mama Brenda, you and I have never had this conversation, and I don't know if I've ever said it publicly. So as a child, it wasn't just my dreams. They show up in my dreams now because I was made afraid. As a child, I could see them, and I could hear them like like a person standing there. That's how clear they were to me. And it never really bothered me. They would call my name all the time, all kind of stuff. And I remember one time, I was very young. I was in the family house. That house had been in the family for generations, so it was old, and a lot of people had come through there. And I was playing, and I heard a voice call my name, and I answered. And my grandmother was on me like white on rice. Like, she jumped up. But if somebody calls your name and you don't see it, don't you ever answer. I think that was the first part of the fear, right? That, oh my God, something wrong with me. And then the next part of the fear was I had a visitation, and it scared me. Like, how the spirit chose to show itself to me was scary. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. And because of that, that night, I was about 12 years old. And I saw what I thought was my mother used to walk the house at night. So she would, in the middle of the night, get up, go check on my sister and me, and then go back to bed. And it was every night. So I was used to seeing a woman walk down the hall and come back up the hall. And this particular night, I thought it was my mother, and I called her to me. And when I opened my eyes, it was not my mother standing there. It was a woman's body, but it was a skull. And I was so afraid. So afraid. I closed my eyes and I prayed to God to never see those things again. And since then, they only in emergencies do I actually see them. Like, if something really is going on and they know I need the instant validation, do they show up? Now it's in my dream. And I think for me, what you said is so important. We have got to validate our baby's gifts, because sometimes I wonder what I lost.
Yes.
Right? Because the dreams are so clear. How much clearer could it be if I was actually seeing them? So, we have to be very careful with children. Children they're coming from that side. So they still have the connection because they're so new. Old people are about to go to that side, so they have a connection. We got to spend some time being patient with our elders and our youth and just listen. Because half the stuff we say is crazy. No. We have to pay attention. My nephew, I'm Lukumi, so sometimes I have on my Aleke. When my nephew was about 3, he touched my shango. Most Lukumi are trying to cover my beads before he touched it. But he touched my shango Aleke and he said, "That's my daddy."
Hello.
Oh, wow.
Hello.
Oh, wow.
So we have to be, we have to suspend our skepticism and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And not put our fear on them. My grandmother put her fear on me. That wasn't my fear. She taught me that. So when we work with young people, especially the little ones, it's important to validate that whole invisible friend thing. We really need to be paying attention and help them develop those talents. I think all of us, I don't think they are ever, all of us have the capability. All of us have the capability. I think we are socialized out of it. But I think if we take time, that's why I'm so big on people have to take time to daydream. If we take time in the quiet, they'll come back. They'll say what they need to say. You'll get the lesson, you'll get the clarity. And it happens all different kinds of ways. It's extremely personal. It might not be that you see or hear something. It might be just a thought flashes, or you'll have a smell, or your hair on the back of your neck stands up. They'll communicate with you in whatever way they need to. But we've got to affirm that for other people, that no, you're not crazy. It's nothing wrong with you. You just made a magic and nobody ever told you that.
Like, no, you don't need no Ritalin. Come on, baby. Let's go work it out a whole nother way.
Listen,
I remember way down in the line, got grown. I think there was a doctor who said, "Well, anyone ever said if you're bipolar?" And I looked at her like, "Excuse me."
A lot of people who I know.
We don't use the names and numbers because I've always had a way to express myself.
Till later in life,
when I hear
what it actually was that made them different, and they struggled for years trying to figure it out, me included.
Right. Because I thought I was crazy.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Because after my grandmother did that to me, I never talk to anybody grown about it until I was grown.
Where do you think
about how my gifts? I'm sorry.
Where do you think your grandmother's fear was coming from? What was the basis of that fear?
You know, I don't. Both sets of my grandparents had a very strange. I don't even know how to put words to it, except that, you know, coming out of slavery, one of the strategies that some Africans chose was to try to prove that they were just like white people. Mm-hmm. That was one of the strategies they chose to try to assert their humanity. They had to appear to be just like them. And I think in a lot of cases, they became very staunch, overzealous Christians. And anything that was not plainly that, they saw as primitive. And so I think more than fear, I think she was not necessarily afraid of spirit so much as she was afraid of what people might think about me if I believed in spirit. Yeah. I did not find out until after my grandfather on my father's side. I did not find out until after he died that he was a conjure man and that people would come to him for baths and things. I didn't know it. Like growing up, I never knew that. And I remember at my grandmother's table, I waited one day. I knew enough to wait until everybody was gone from the house. And it was just she and I asked her, Grandma, so I'm hearing this stuff about granddaddy. Did he, what, you know, is it true? And she said, oh, girl, you don't want to hear about that. And she wouldn't tell me. And she affirmed that, yes, people would come. Yeah, your granddad and his brother used to put all kind of stuff in them pots and make baths, but you don't need to know anything about that. She never told me. Never. And I think that's part of, when we talk about the tenacity of culture, culture can only be as tenacious as the people are willing to discuss it.
Yeah.
I wonder what was lost. I wonder.
But sometimes the culture comes out because of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were afraid of what would happen. You know, what am I going to do to my granddaughter if I put all this stuff on her?
Right.
You know, she wanted the best. She's transitioned now too, but she wanted the best for me. And I remember one night, he started singing a song, and I wish he didn't even finish the lyrics because it would have been so interesting. The song was, "The devil's gonna get you by and by." And he was singing it in a very playful way. And my grandfather did not play. Like, he never played, teased or anything. But he was singing it in such a playful way. And before he could get to the last line, she snatched him out of the room and told him to leave me alone. And I to this day, I wish I knew. I wish I knew what that song was about.
Wow.
I saw, and I think I'm sure in Jamaica it's this case too. My grandparents lived in very rural Alabama. So it was not unusual to see workings like glasses with herbs and things in them in the corner of a room. It wasn't unusual, right? It just wasn't discussed. And I remember when I was grown and learning about Nkisi, which is, you know, it's a Congo tradition of medicine bag. And when I was learning about Nkisi and Robert Thompson's, Ferris Thompson's The Flash of the Spirit, I was reading that book, and he talked about how in the U.S. South, they became like the Tobies or the Walk Boys, they, you know, in red flannel and burlap sacks and things like that. And instantly I was transported back to my grandparents' bedroom where it used to be a little burlap sack hanging from the door jamb in their master bedroom. And I remember being a little girl asking my granddaddy what it was, and he took it down only one time. This is the only time I ever saw him touch it. He took it down one time and let me squeeze it, and he said it's a little man living inside. Now I was 5 or 6, maybe 5. So I just, you know, run on play. It wasn't until I was reading that book 25 years later that I realized, oh, so all these things that my grandfather were true.
Wow.
That's why it's so important when we say ancestral reverence. Yes, we are talking about those people generations back, but we're also talking about the people we can give name to, right? The people that we knew. Those are the ones we also need to be connected to.
Right. The spiritual connection.
Very much so. Very much so. And we've got to find a way, and speaking of the babies, to make it seem normal. It's not abnormal. It's normal.
I think part of it has to do with I was unbelievably blessed to be sent to Jamaica for 7 years to live with nothing but old people. Nothing but old people. My grandmother's already in her 70s. When I moved from where she was and went to someplace else to board for 5 years, those folks were in their 70s. I was 7 and 8 years old. If I did not have the patience of old people who, when they get up in the morning, they ask you about your dreams. They're not rushing to go out to get the job to do. No, they asking you what you dreamt, because I know that's how numbers got played. You know, the old community with the young. There is such a separation now, and even when you look at the impact of, because when you look at the impact of the brain drain of the current states of migration and what we're left with, whether it's Windrush, and my parents were double migrants. They did England, then they did America, or those who came here. Like someone said, why is it the next generations wave those flags so higher? There's these pieces missing, and then in the process of assimilating into a new society, one of the first things you're told to let go of are the language where you speak, when you talk with who you're there with. And when you have to throw that away, like I told folks, that is one of the most powerful tools I have. Listen, aligns and grounds and sets me straight. I look at the Gullah Geechee, they got that. They got something they can fold back into. There's a whole slew of those who just get to check the box African American who have lost spirit.
Listen, Mama Brenda, and you're talking about language, because spirit lives in language, right? In a lot of ways. When I was doing that master's work on Adinkra, at Africa Town, so for those who may not know, I'm sure most of you do know, though, that the last slave ship that came into the United States landed in Mobile, which is where I was born. And those Africans, because it was illegal at that point to bring what we called saltwater Africans. It was illegal to bring Africans directly from the continent into the United States at that point. And so the U.S. Navy set them free. And they started a village right outside of Mobile in Plateau, Alabama. We now call it Africa Town. I went to Africa Town with my father. My father drove me. One holiday season we were in Mobile to the cemetery where these people were buried. And I just wanted to give thanks and, write down some dates off some headstones and that kind of thing. And the guy, the manager of the cemetery, was there. And I walked up to him and said, hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm working on some research and this. And the man started talking to me, and I was looking at him like, what language is that? I have no clue what you're saying to me. Now, I'm born in Mobile. My family is in Mobile. I go to Mobile for all major holidays. At least 2 or 3 times a year, we're in Mobile. But he was talking to me, and it sounded like another language. Luckily, my father was standing there, and he starts talking back to the man. And I'm like, you've been my daddy for 40 years. I ain't never heard I couldn't follow the conversation. Couldn't follow it. And I remember, when we got back in the car, I was like, Daddy, like, he was like, I was talking English. What are you talking about? I was like, no, I've never heard it. I don't know. What did y'all say? It ended up that the man was related to us some kind of way. I would have missed all of that. This is what happens when language leaves. That's a family member I would have never been connected to.
Ancestral memory.
It's amazing.
Ancestral memory. We have a similar thing about that in Jamaica as we pertains to our dance moves. As you would be aware that dancehall is very popular here, and when the connection between dancehall in Jamaica and Africa started connecting, we realized that there were similar moves. So moves that we created and patented. When we went to Africa, we saw them doing the same dancehall moves. So we're like, ooh, ancestral memory. In some way, those dance moves came across the trade into us. And even though dancehall was created in the late 1980s, early 1990s, long after the abolishment of slavery, young people were creating moves.
Yes.
That were similar to moves from Africa in dancehall, ancestral memory.
It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful, beautiful thing.
I think when I'm able to have gone to spaces, it always surprises me here in the Gullah Geechee Nation, the use of hand claps, voice, and feet, because you took the drum. And then I go to Ecuador, who in Esmeraldas, that set landed free.
Wow.
And it's marimba there. But there's still, you can hear the low country rhythm coming through.
Wow.
And then you dip into Jamaica and like, hold up. I get the kumina. Oh, baby, hold up now. Kumina combines my bembe and my tambong and the low country rhythm, because it's that combination of the Akan and the Bakongo, but the Bakongo came as indentured. They didn't necessarily come enslaved. So they combined again. And it's like, okay, y'all hurting me. But then when they drop me in a compound, in a space where, okay, y'all just using a different language. The Maroon are the Gullah and the Gullah are the Maroons.
Mm-hmm.
And you get, and it's just an overwhelming sense of each step got deeper and deeper. Now, mind you, I was there from 7 to 14. None of what I grasped at 54 was what I had a hold of at 7 to 14. I'm confirmed Anglican who attended Catholic school. The people who I lived with were staunch members of St. Jago de la Vega's. St. James Cathedral, the largest cathedral in that part of the hemisphere. What the heck I know about them drums? But here in America, where did I go? Hey, Sakre, how you doing? Oh, we need to go deeper? Yep, salam alaikum. Scratch me, because that's my home. Now, when we reach down to Brazil and we touch some candomblé, it's going to be a whole different story. But hey, you know, but it was even in the measure of getting scratched. Okay, can I please get to look at voodoo differently, because there they are? Or looking at, in the last few weeks, the issue of revivalism and how that Africanness came back up within the having been emancipated 20 some odd years, because emancipation was 1834, but revival so-called came around in the 1860s. But it might have been when folks was noticing that peoples was doing what they were doing.
Listen.
Yes. Because I'm looking at the marks and the V's on the floor, and I'm like, hold up. Because we sat in on a young man's part of his dissertation. His dissertation is on the dress of revivalism.
Wow.
The symbolism, just the dress alone of revivalism. It's off the chain. You want to watch Orisha dance? It is in these spaces and places that only thing that got me, when they go to tie on and hold with a belt to hold down, Santeria said, well, let's smooth it out and hear your communication, as opposed to leaving it to one voice and the rest of you just achieving Mayal. We in Santeria in Europe, you're going to achieve Mayal, but you're going to achieve Mayal with purpose. We know who's coming through you. And there you can see the sweetening of the pot as it I don't even know how any other way to put it. You know, you allow for the honey going on the tongue. I guess that's what I can say.
Unconquered still.
Yeah.
Unconquered still.
You know, so that's why when they speak about where folks have been looking at the videos and like, but I don't know about this, because yes, it may be concentrated in the East or in certain pockets, because that's where they got particular tribes or particular sets of indenture to do whatever job, and that came up out of them. But when you hear people responding from across the diaspora, oh, that is like what we have in Martinique. Oh, that's my people, and that's Kikongo, and I'm from there, and I'm sitting in the middle of, yeah, y'all was right with them readings, huh?
Listen, listen. My first Acom, I was like, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? I expected something straight out of a Hollywood voodoo movie, right? Oh my God. And when they started, I was like, this ain't nothing but devotion during Baptist church service.
Yes.
It's the same.
Yes. That's why the older the church I walk into Charleston and the less of a band they have, the deeper you go in. I'm like, oh, it's an Egum party. If they got them white sheets, that's my church. That's my church. And then going into Jamaica and you present me with Kumina, and I'm like, and then I saw it's these nucleus measures that I noticed as Naka said this morning from Goge, Africa. It's physical distancing. It's not social distancing. It's physical distancing. When I looked at how the energy comes about in a revivalist situation, they line and line and line until they curl, and it's a tight, homogeneous, one flow of people. It's the same thing in Kumina. We are used to getting together. And we get together more than anybody else. Our dances, even if it's the craziest music, acts that our bodies entwine.
Listen, homecoming. I tell people all the time, we are not studying HBCU homecomings enough. Because that's the same thing.
And I've never been to one.
Oh, it's the same thing because it's people coming from everywhere. It's all circulating around. I don't care who winning the game. It's the band. It's the band. It's the food. I'm telling you, we have not done a good job. This is why I said earlier, I'm indicted. I don't think I've done a good job helping people see how HBCU, it's the same. A lot of our traditions are the same. They take different forms. But what Marimba Ani calls the asili, the cultural seed, is the same. It's the same. And you can't run from that.
Nope.
You can't run from it. And I think to what you were saying earlier, we make it easier for the kids when we explain that. Just stop running because it's going to catch up sooner or later. You might as well stop running.
That's why I give you the video, like my Middle Passage Remembrance video. This is our entire day. Here is 3 hours. It was 3 hours of programming. You have your educational component. You will go to the water and put your feet where the ancestors stepped off those boats before they went to these pest houses. If they survive the 10 days, then maybe they get to sit out here and be part of a mail order to go over. If you're not understanding it that way, have you pulled out the Book of Negroes? Because when they speak of Charlestown, they're talking about Charleston. Right. When I stood in Worthy Plantation in Jamaica, surrounded by nothing but cane fields, a very still active, it says on it, sugar cane, molasses, and rum, founded in 1670. And I've got tears running down my face because that's the same time you founded Charleston. And I'm like, hold up. How many of us am I standing with right now? Because I get to walk through Jamaica differently. I'm about the whole, it's nothing but the whole Egun sheet. Yes, it is. I am. I'm working Egun every day, all day. This is it. That's what I do here. It is from here I've been able to connect the dots across the diaspora. Wow. They had me come here. I did the reverse migration with an anchor. I came from New York, went to the port of Baltimore, got off the bus, picked up my sewing machine, slept the night with my anchor, okay, got on the train, came into South Carolina. We pushing 10 years in a couple of weeks. But from here, that's why there's some cores when I look and we know it's sister relationship with Barbados and with Sierra Leone. And then as you look at different folks taking their DNA tests, it's been an amazing, or when folks were speaking about Benin this morning, King Tofa was here. I'm like, it's amazing. And then you touch, and you get to all the islands where we got dropped off. I want to visit all our cousins, all and up and down the stretch. I'll get to the motherland sooner or later, but I need to see our cousins all up and down the stretch. Bluefields, Nicaragua, where they speak English. Sections of Venezuela where a bunch of Jamaicans are still at. There are over 300 plus Jamaican descended families in Ecuador, because many of them went there years ago to help build the railroad. What is it? La Nariz del Diablo, the Devil's Nose, which is still an active railroad situation, except many of them left the country, some stayed. My friend's name, Eliodoro Esteban Portobello Clarke.
Wow. Wow.
You know, and they never touched the island. That's one set I'd love to bring through. That's one. Just bring them on over. Come on, we going to Jamaica.
And Mama Brenda, you taking them home. Like the spirits that were here that couldn't touch home. When we go back, we take them home.
I just want some folks to bring back evidence sometimes. Folks keep saying the journey is private. Oh, my pictures are for me. If you don't share this, that's why I want to go. If I'm already sharing all I got. I go, oh, it's a wrap.
Listen, my only public Flickr account. That's the only public account I have on Flickr is my Ghana trip.
And we have to share. We have to tell the realities of when we hit ground. And it's interesting, yes, watching the celebrities, but I want to hear the stories of the person that's down the street, and it wasn't even necessarily their DNA test. It's watching the Gullah Geechee go. They had a set that went out, not in that circle, so I didn't even know they went. But until I started seeing some pictures on social media, I'm like, you know, you got to share that. You got to allow us to share in the power as well. You can't just go soak up that energy and not come back and use it in some way, shape, or form for the greater good.
Because it's medicine.
It is.
It's the healing that we were talking about earlier. It is reconnecting. It's that what Marimbani said, let the circle be unbroken. We're pulling it back full circle. And that's not a private issue.
Woo.
Community healing.
Deborah! I know she there. Oh, she muted me. she was there because she was going to wrap you up. I know you have a busy schedule. I didn't want to keep you too much longer so you and I could do this. What else you got coming out your brain, Shelly? I see you. I see your eyebrow.
I'm just still on the topic of education and how we can infuse more in our curriculum so there can, one, be more belief in self, two, more acceptance of self, and three, that they can know they're from a generation of greatness.
But I got a question. When did that change? Because I got all that from Jamaica. If I didn't have my 7 years there, I wouldn't be me.
All right, here what it is for me. So at the school level, you learn about great Caribbean leaders. The great Caribbean leaders that you learn about are political leaders, sportsmen, right? But you don't learn about great African leaders. We don't learn about great African leaders before slavery. Most of our history lesson has to do with what happened during slavery, but not much about the life in Africa pre-slavery, and the king and the queen and the empires, the kingdoms that existed. Because I think if our children learn more about that, and not that the continent started with slavery, you can have a more acceptance of self, belief of self, and it will fulfill one of my dreams that we will be inventors for generation and generation. So where do we start to change our curriculum to bring more of pre-slavery African continent? Let them know that countries like Ethiopia was never colonized.
Right.
Where do we start? Because their parents are not teaching them.
Parents
they're not.
don't know.
I was about to say parents can't teach what they don't know, and a lot of these teachers can't teach what they don't know. So the first part is for us to develop those teaching tools, because I work with students every day. I work with future teachers. You know, I teach future teachers. They don't know, and they always say to me, "If we didn't have you as a professor, we would not know." So I think part of it is developing the tools and the resources for that. But in terms of the practical strategy, is if the standards, I don't know about Jamaican educational standards, but here in the US, the standards are very clear about what we can teach when. But what is possible is when I teach slavery, I make it very clear, because Europeans were very clear. They got these particular Africans because they had this skill. They got these particular Africans because they had this skill. And then my students start to wonder, well, how did they get those skills? And then it's a natural curiosity that takes them to, well, what were they doing before? Because if they already knew how, in Senegambia, if they already knew how to grow rice, and that's why they ended up in Charleston, well, what were they growing rice for? And what were they doing with it? And all that kind of just conversation, you just spark it by making it clear to them that these people were people. One of the issues in the American educational system, I'm not sure if it's there the same in Jamaica, is that we just teach slaves. Right? Not the slave, but just slaves. So they have no name, no face, no.
Oh, yes. Same thing here. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's important.
It's just a brand. It's just a brand.
So what I like to do is bring out some of the narratives. Let them read letters that African people wrote each other. Let them read, the census records and see how owners were listing people. And then it becomes real that these were people, and people have memory. Now, what do you think they remember? Just those kinds of questions that spark the curiosity for students. And it helps them understand that these people just didn't pop up out the blue in this state of existence. They were made that thing, or that people attempted to make them that thing. They remained humans, but something happened. What happened is not the birth of these people. And so
we missed the last part of that sentence. You said, and so?
And so I just try to spark the natural curiosity, because if they're curious, then they'll be more willing to look for supplemental resources. And then I got you, baby. The first time you asked me to help you, now I just need you to add.
Dr. Tiff, I thank you so much for doing that, because you are creating generations of people who will actually know themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Woo! I knew it was going to
Yeah.
be practical. And see, there's other avenues we could take, but we knew what we pulled you in today, because then we're going to find other ways to continue this series, because I think we know we've ended up with an abundance of material that we can't cram into that weekend. And we can literally, I was amazed when somebody, because we just put up the Twitter account. I haven't used it, but somebody retweeted something on the Twitter account and said, we've been giving them African history, African diaspora culture, 24/7, 365.
Wow.
Middle Passage Remembrance, that page is not just for that weekend. We found ways to fill and feed all year long to prepare. And I'm glad that you're on the journey. You're preparing teachers to go out there and do stuff. I'm glad that we're able to keep connecting these dots across the diaspora. And it's going to get bigger, because this is the start of it. We're finding it now. It's like we have to say to ourselves, well, I know in academic settings, you're probably talking to stuff all the time, but I've never really sat in a room with Jamaica and Georgia and Nigeria. And it was mind blowing this morning when you look at times how much time and expense it costs for people to get to all these conferences,
Yeah.
and they've literally been able to knock some stuff out in Zoom. I mean, yeah, I still need to touch ground. I don't know about nobody else, because some of y'all can just have conversation. But I want to go and come back with stuff. And one of the major reasons is that I think that my materials become reference materials for those who are doing their research. It's like someone said, when you going to write the book? I'm not. My hands don't do that no more, but I will go get and document as much as I can so it's full standing proof. I saw an academic entity do a recording, and then I guess for them, they just want the recording, the audio, because it was under ethnomusicology. But all that they documented, they literally only put up 4 minutes of video. And I'm like, that's such a disservice, because there's so many who are of Jamaican culture across the diaspora who had very little knowledge of this particular phenomenon unless you're from that area. And it hurt me that they weren't putting it out. I'm like, well, hell, that's why I exist, because y'all about to get it all.
Good. We need it.
Folks haven't realized is I went into one situation with 3 cameras. There's a laptop sitting in one corner. That's one view. There's an HD camera with another view, and then there's me and the pieces that had to go specifically for social media on the early part. I'm gonna come at you with one event from 3 different views. Wow. And because at times some things were filmed with no visuals in mind, because I wanted that bass beat, I just left the GoPro right beside the drum. And at times I was a little upset about one video from a kampong, and then I realized, no, you've seen videos that's got darn near 1 million views and they blurry as heck, because musicians have told me, we don't care what it looks like. What does it sound like? Exactly. And I want to get to that spirit of the person. That's why I like Kumina, because we can take it and go across the board. And I'm having folks that are Gullah Geechee listen to Kumina, and folks who are coming to listen to Gullah Geechee, and I'm like, oh, this is getting good, because I need to find that one rhythm that can unite us. I looked at the Native American community and all those nations. The children you're all taught the jingle dance when you're young. So when they put out a call and say they needed folks to do the jingle dance, and including the prayers for health and healing, and they went to a Facebook group that grew to 65,000 in less than a week. And I'm like, how come we can't do that? We don't have this, just something on one accord that we can all fall into rhythm in. And that's across the diaspora, from the bottom of South America, come up through the Leeward and Seaward Islands, through the Caribbean and the West Indies, and up into North America. There's got to be something. If you're left on them boats, something's got to be in that memory that can wake us all up. But there's no one rhythm we can all unite on yet. Yet individually, pick a group. You drop a certain beat, Puerto Ricans are hello. Yeah. Dominicans, Haitians, we all have, in between they have that, but there's got to be this overall tone, or maybe I want too much.
Mama Brenda, for 2 things. One is, have you ever seen that documentary called The Language We Cry In?
Yes.
Okay, so that what you're talking about leads me there. But the other thing is, you know what I would want to figure out, and I wonder if the rhythm is somewhere there, is Junkanu, the word, right? Because in Mobile, Mardi Gras is Jokane Day.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I've heard that.
Started out of Bahamas, correct?
Right. Yeah. So I've always wondered, Jokane supposedly was a white man and this and this and this. And I'm like, no, that it sounds too much. And I'm wondering, is there something in that? Is there something there? Because Mobile has that history between not only the Bahamas, but during the Haitian Revolution, we have a lot of Haitians moving back and forth. It's a very Creole place without being Creole. I've always wondered, like, what the rhythms there would be like when you start thinking about that New Orleans type of Congo Square kind of buck jumping music.
But Jonkunu is very big here too in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And you all Jonkunu?
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, if you go to the east in Jamaica, they will spell it with a Jon. And if you go to the south in Jamaica, they will spell it with a Junk.
Ah.
So there is a contention in Jamaica as to how it should be spelled. So some books will have it as Junk, and some books will have it as Jon.
Wow.
But the style is the same. Style is the same. The characters are the same, and it's practiced at the same time of the year around Christmas, right across Jamaica. Very big deal. Big deal. So it's interesting when you hear like persons from across the country quarreling. No, that's not how it's supposed to be spelled. No, everyone trying to find out what that their way is the right way, but they're all doing it the same way.
Yeah. It's powerful work, Mama Brenda. I thank you for it.
Pardon.
I thank you for the work that you do.
Listen, I just being obedient to my spirit. Now, the fact that there's a good 21 of them rolling around at any point on duty, that's a whole other story. But they've effectively found the way that, and I'm grateful. Oh, awesome notes. Oh, I love you. That and I need to actually pull all these notes for the. Oh Lord, I hate y'all. Now it's work. Send me these notes in WhatsApp because I can put them all in the credits. And then somebody's going to listen to this and get me all these book names, so we'll have the bibliography that goes through it. Because this has been an educational moment with Tell 'em Tiff Told You. Yeah, that's how you find her on Twitter. Tiffany PhD. Woo! The teacher of teachers. You have
Thank you.
Thank you. Shelly Ann.
Thank you so much.
It's always good to have a
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
And from
I
that,
really enjoyed it. Thank you.
and
I had
behind
to
the
step away for
Sankofa.
a moment.
I
Yes.
thank you for the connection. I thank you all for today. I needed it. So I
Thank you, Dr. Tiff. This has been wonderful. I so enjoyed meeting you and hearing you.
I hope we're all in touch.
Oh, this ain't
The
nothing
thoughts.
but
This is
beginning,
beautiful.
as I've said before,
We truly appreciate
we
this.
have to understand
From the
why.
remembrance, as a remembrance.
As a remembrance, why were we not making use of this technology before? Why did it take to the pandemic for us to start making sure that we have these conferences to keep our lines connected? Like I said, we ain't into this physical distancing.
Right.
Yes.
Deborah?
But there was love. There was definitely love and spiritual healing and learning.
Yes.
So it might be through a screen, but could definitely feel the love. And I thank you all. Thank you, Miss Deborah. Thank you, Miss Brenda. Thank you, Dr. Tiff.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It was really a pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Deborah, you
Enjoy
got
the
one last zing for Dr. Tiff? You know we always give him one last zing.
Well, that unconquered still was in my spirit. So I'm just gonna leave us with, we gotta walk in that strength and that truth that we are unconquered.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Until we meet in the physical, it's been absolutely wonderful in the virtual. Virtual Sankofa 2020, Charleston Middle Passage Remembrance. We are here for you. Tell them Tiff told you. That's Dr. Tiffany Pogue, PhD.